New concerns are being raised about YouTube's automated recommendation system, which has reportedly referred several users to videos that sexualize children. YouTube has promised to limit recommendations on posts that they believe would put children at risk, but some researchers are saying that doesn't go far enough. Joining me to explain how all of this is happening is Jonas Kaiser. He's the associate researcher at the Alexander von Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society, where he's looking into where and how scientific findings are being shared online. Jonas joins me now via Skype. Thank you so much for joining me, Jonas.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jonas, the genesis of this is a New York Times article from June 3rd titled "On YouTube's Digital Playground, There's an Open Gate for Pedophiles." It details how an innocent woman uploaded a video of her child just swimming in the pool. It got hundreds of thousands of views that were automated and reportedly being consumed largely by the pedophilic audience, which is disgusting. You had this comment to say there. You said that it's YouTube's algorithm that connects these channels. That's the scary thing. Algorithm is a complicated word to many people. So explain, why is YouTube's automated systems boosting something which is obviously illegal and shouldn't be boosted in the first place?
Right. So algorithms in this context are really the way YouTube's traffic is driven, right? It's just basically YouTube's system behind what you see on the website that constantly learns and adapts of what users are doing, and basically trying to keep users on the site, keep watching, and they constantly optimize towards this goal that users stay on the site, engage with the content, and watch the next video. And often that is a good thing, right? Like, we want more of the same when it comes to music, entertainment, sports. We, however, found that this also counts when it comes to videos of little kids.
So, Jonas, you undertook a little experiment, which was detailed in the article. Could you tell us about the experiment that you and your team found and the really troubling implications of that?
Yeah, so what we've did is we followed YouTube's channel as well as video recommendations to kind of like understand what was happening in Brazil. And in doing so, we really by accident uncovered a community of channels and from their videos where basically YouTube kept recommending videos of small children and minors that were kind of like sexualized in different ways.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think it's important to note, YouTube is not consciously doing this, but the way, like you pointed out, is that if I'm watching a video of somebody skating, then it's going to automatically say this person likes skating, and they're going to boost other videos of people skating. Unfortunately, that's being used in this case by pedophiles. Now, is YouTube doing anything to combat this?
Yes, YouTube, I think, since February is actively engaging and kind of like fighting this kind of content, and especially what pedophiles are doing with otherwise innocent content on their platform. They started by deactivating comment sections. They now kind of like introduced new changes based on our research and the New York Times reporting, basically limiting who's allowed to live stream. They wanted to enforce the comment section ban even further, and it also seems like they're doing changes on the algorithm.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's enough, Jonas? Is there, or is this just an endemic part of the problem with having an open source platform where hundreds of millions of people can upload videos? The argument I've heard from pro-tech folks on this is just a growing pain to having an algorithm which generally works for everybody.
I think parts of this works, and this is kind of like very heartening to see, because for us the most important thing was kind of like for YouTube to do something and to protect children, right? Mm-hmm. The bigger question should be, like YouTube's algorithm are driven by the company's wish to grow, to have more people on their site, to make more money through advertising, and to do so they have to kind of like keep people engaged. And the question is, like, what will YouTube kind of like do once they realize that, for example, in this kind of content, when it comes to videos of children, but also when it comes to politics, whether actually having this kind of recommendation algorithm that keeps people watching and might lead to more extreme content is actually the best way for society as a whole.
I think that's the most excellent point that you raised there, Jonas, which is this might be great for YouTube and Google's or Alphabet's bottom line. It might be great for the shareholder of Google. Is it good for the 300 million Americans and the 7 billion people on this planet? Because as you correctly point out, extremist content is often content that hooks you in and keeps you going for a long period of time. And so another thing I want to turn to with you is another focus of your research, which is far-right extremism. And one of the things that has happened recently is that YouTube just a few days ago, as part of a broader fracas that's currently going on about harassment, banned many people who it considers Nazis or associated with the Nazi movement. Do you think that that is an effective way to combat against this, or is it just endemic to the algorithm itself that once somebody opens something up, that they're on their way down a rabbit hole?
I think I think it's both, actually. I think if you have this platform that is open for everybody, people whose views are not represented in the mainstream, that is not on mainstream in the news or like what you can talk about with your friends, really, people will go online and look for allies, right? And this is kind of like what we see on YouTube, that a lot of more of the extreme content is just more prominent and popular there because it's not, you can't find it really anywhere else to that extent. So, and obviously the algorithm can only work with what they have. And this is kind of like part of the issue. The bigger question for me, again, is basically what we just talked about, is kind of like, is YouTube aware of the problem? What do they kind of like want to do about it? And especially when it comes to content from the far right, when it comes to white supremacists, from neo-Nazis, YouTube, in my mind, has been doing too little too late, especially kind of like in the context of how these users behave often on their platforms, when it comes to harassment, when it comes of kind of like threatening minorities.
Yeah, so Jonas, I want to make sure we tease that out, because this is the most important point that you've made, which was up at the top. It's not necessarily that YouTube likes having this terrible content, but people like YouTube because it gives them the ability to give their message to a larger audience. They would never be able to get on a show like this. They would never be able to get mainstream accessibility, but this allows them to curate content and deliver it specifically to an audience that they own and is already susceptible to it. So like you said, ultimately YouTube has to work with what it has. And that really raises questions about whether YouTube is an inherent good or bad, right?
Right, no, I think that's about right. Becca Lewis, for example, from Data and Society, highlighted that in like an analysis where she had looked at how basically actors from the right had each other on their shows and called this kind of like a network of alternative influence. This is kind of like communities that are like have set themselves apart from the general mainstream, public, and kind of like are doing their own thing, and they're making money off of it, and they're gaining rapid influence in the political discussion.
So what ultimately can be done about this? Is demonetization? That was one thing that YouTube took against a guy named Steven Crowder, who's very popular on YouTube. He was embroiled in this big snafu that's currently happening. Do you think that that's an effective strategy? Is that the demonetization, but ultimately is allowing even content to exist on the platform? Is that just what it's going to be? And I should also note, I think free speech concerns are very much here. I've seen so many people. I've seen that the YouTube standards unfairly applied to many people on the right, while disgusting videos on the left of people demonizing on the right are allowed to be monetized and are allowed to remain up there. So it really comes down to the lack of transparency that comes out of YouTube in its enforcement actions, right?
I agree. I think there, in general, needs more transparency, especially when it comes to so kind of like thorny issues surrounding First Amendment rights, which I think should be protected at all costs. However, obviously, there's always this question of kind of like to what extent, and the bigger question is really like, how do YouTube's affordances, for example, monetarization, but also algorithmic recommendation, play into this? And do we have to kind of like have this form also like basically emphasizing and spreading this content in a way, or also rewarding extremist content in a way that we wouldn't otherwise?
I think the fundamental question that we'll have to confront here is that YouTube makes most of its money off of, like you said, off of hooking people and keeping them engaged with their content so they can serve up more ads before you. And that endemic business model is also very bad for extremist actions, for leading pedophiles down a certain path, and for leading all sorts of unsavory things. Conspiracy theorists love YouTube because they can lay these types of things out. And I think the real question that we're going to have to confront is, at what point can people step in? Now, do you have any policy solutions that you can recommend or have recommended in Washington?
I have recommended, like in contact with the New York Times, that basically when it comes to content of, predominantly videos where children aren't there, but also when it comes to political content, there's really no need for the recommendation algorithm to work in the same way as, let's say, in music or sports. Because like these are really important issues. These are issues where we, like where nuance are important. We kind of like have to hear discussions and debates. We have to kind of like think about it. And just like a recommendation algorithm that gives you more of the same and potentially more extreme views isn't healthy, I think, for a political debate.
That's a very interesting point about selectively turning off and on the algorithm. And I'm sure I'd like to elevate that discussion here in Washington. And then the final thing I'd like to talk with you about, and this really fits in this, is with children themselves. So children themselves view YouTube as a entertainment platform. Any of the new parents that I speak to tell me that one of the things that their kids love is to watch cartoons on YouTube. But troublingly, we actually saw that the algorithm and content creators were serving up more disturbing cartoons via the algorithm. And so should it also apply that algorithms should not be able, or algorithms and recommendations should not apply to children's based content? Because it can also lead, young developing brains down some very dark paths.
Right. I can't obviously comment on the impact this might have or this might not have. I think it's definitely important to think about like how YouTube systems are consistently being gamed by actors who just want to make money out of it, and to kind of like understand what drives traffic right now, also often algorithmically, and basically try to jump on this.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jonas. It's been very great talking to you, and a really interesting subject, so thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So we'll have more Rising for you after this.